You don't need a lot of time to practice or learn a language, and in fact, it's really easy to fit into your routine. One thing people get wrong a lot of the time is thinking that you need to spend like 3 hours straight sitting down studying really hard in order to learn a language. In reality, this just couldn't be further from the truth. But not only that, if you watch TV whilst eating your meals, if you listen to the radio whilst in the car, if you listen to music while cooking your meals, going to the gym or going on a run, then I can guarantee you that in this video, you will get some value. So finally, those of you who want to learn a language can find the time to get started, or those of you who have already started but maybe feel like progress has slowed down can get back into your rhythm and get the momentum going. And that's exactly what I'll be explaining in this video. My name's Zeke. I'm a full-time student, but in the past 3 years, I've managed to learn 3 languages, balancing things like school, house chores, housework, and just general life. So let me show you how I managed to do this. And just so you know, there's going to be a summary at the end, so make sure to stick around. So these first couple of points are going to have the biggest impact on those of you who think they don't have time to learn a language whatsoever, or are really just struggling to find the time in general. Essentially, the method that I used to learn, which bases itself on a principle called immersion, but the principle between immersion is consuming content. And what this means is all the time that you have where you are able to listen to something is time where you're able to learn a language. Okay, so just keep that in mind whilst I'm going through these next points. So let me show you how these first couple of points are going to completely change your perspective on language learning. The basics are replacing any audio or visual content with content in the target language of your choice. For example, when you listen to music, watch your favorite TV shows or YouTubers in your native language, replace those with content in your target language. For example, if you're learning Japanese, you're going to be watching Japanese TV shows instead, Japanese YouTubers and things like this. I know for a lot of you, this is going to sound not appealing whatsoever because like me, a lot of us really like to spend our downtime watching our favorite content creators and things like this. But I'm not telling you to completely get rid of that, but I'm just saying even spending half of that time in the target language is going to benefit you so much. And sometimes it really is just a matter of prioritizing language learning, a long-term goal that you really want to achieve over those kind of short-term periods of gratification. I think it's a pretty small sacrifice for a big reward. All you need to do is just replace some of your old habits with some new habits. In general, what I tend to do is listen to an audio course to get the basics. I'll listen to podcasts and I'll watch YouTube videos or just visual content in the language. I'll also supplement this with flashcards and a little bit of speaking. But the thing is, the majority of this is just fit into ordinary time that I would have spent doing something else. Now, there are a couple other ways you can leverage this to your advantage, but I'll be talking about that later on in the video. These are things like music, practicing your speaking, and leveraging AI as well. But yeah, that's a little bit more advanced. So like I said, I'll cover that later on in the video. And to kind of just put this into perspective for you guys, for those of you who commute to work or travel to school, this is going to give you at least like an extra 10 minutes of language learning. And this could easily give you an extra like hour. Basically, the more mentally unoccupied time that you have, the better. For example, when you're on a train, it's looking out the window. This is mentally unoccupied. You could be playing games on your phone, or you could be language learning, you know, things like that. Just to give you an idea of how much time you can actually find in your daily routine, here's what mine looks like. So I'll wake up in the morning and I'll listen to a podcast for about 10 minutes whilst I'm making my breakfast. Then I'll watch one episode of Hajime no Ippo, which is about 20 minutes in Japanese. Instead of watching like a regular YouTube channel that I would usually watch, I'll spend 30 minutes listening to a podcast on my way to and from school. And then sometimes I'll eat dinner in my room, which will give me time to watch another like 20 minutes of YouTube or another episode of Hajime no Ippo. And then I watch 15 minutes of YouTube just before I go to bed in French, instead of scrolling on TikTok or something like that. But for me, that kind of roughly hour a day is what I can fit into just my daily routine without actually having to create any new space. And the thing is, it's so spread out through different activities in the day that it doesn't even feel like I'm working hard to study the language, but I still make a really good amount of progress because on an average, I am spending about an hour a day listening to the language, hearing the language and absorbing new words. And over time, this builds up and does create fluency. One brick doesn't seem like a lot, but keep placing a brick every day and eventually you've got a house. And according to the FSI, if you were to study a language for 30 minutes to 1 hour, a language like Spanish or French as an English speaker, you would be able to learn the language in 1.5 to 2 years. That shows how literally all of us can find the time in our daily life to actually learn a language to fluency. Now we've covered in general kind of how it works. Let's dive into how we can really implement this. So like I've mentioned, one of the best ways is just replacing the content that you would already watch with content in your target language. So anytime that you would go on YouTube, anytime that you would watch Netflix, just think to yourself, I could be doing this in my target language right now and just give it a go. Now, the trick is to make this fun, because you're replacing an activity that you really enjoy already with something that's going to be a little bit challenging and a lot harder. The best way that I find to do this is using a service that gives you interactive subtitles like FluentU. FluentU's Chrome extension transforms YouTube and Netflix subtitles into interactive subtitles. You've even got the option to learn with the content in their curated library or with any subtitled content in Netflix and YouTube. It makes watching content in your target language so much more fun and enjoyable, and it becomes something that you actually look forward to because you're just able to watch that content that you really want to whilst learning a new language. I use this all the time. I really think it's so important because purposely replacing all that fun time with something that's maybe going to be a little bit challenging is really hard, but FluentU just makes that barrier to entry so much lower. FluentU helps maximize learning in short bursts because even with 10 to 15 minutes, you can watch some high quality and engaging content and actually learn and pick up new words. FluentU even adapts to your progress and suggests you new videos and quizzes based on the new words that you've learned. This means you don't have to waste time struggling to find content that is actually at a suitable level for you. They've got a free trial and you even get a big discount if you use my link down in the description. Just replace one episode a day with an episode of something in your target language using FluentU, and I promise it will be so much easier and you'll be able to get started learning that language. Another great way that you can find time to learn a language is by replacing your TikTok or social media, not with other content, but just turning them into your target language. For example, you can change your language in TikTok to French, Japanese, whatever language it is that you're learning, and the feed will automatically start showing you videos in that language. And this is such a good way to make sure that you're always getting some time immersed in that language and learning and picking up new words. This is something that I've done for a while and I think it's super effective, and you can learn lots of really good slang on there and just how people in real life use the language. And if you get good enough, it almost allows you to get addicted to the language. Now, another way that you can do this is, of course, audio courses, which I mentioned earlier. Now, these are essential if you're at the start of learning a language, and especially if you're on the move, on the go, you're cycling, doing something, and you're just multitasking. These are such an effective way to start learning a language. And if you think you're really busy, but you do really want to get started, then this is such an effective way. I use the website languagepod101.com to get started, and then when I get home, I would just kind of watch some YouTube playlists which kind of do the same thing, but you've just got the visual aspect of it to make it a little bit more fun. But just beginner courses like that. Now, for those of you who are a little bit more advanced, as I mentioned earlier, you might be able to pick up some new words by replacing your music into music in your target language. And I think everybody at any level should be listening to music in their target language. This is going to keep you motivated, and you're going to kind of be getting into the culture of the target language. So I think this is always a good idea. But those of you who are more advanced, you can definitely use this to your advantage and start picking up new words by really tuning into the lyrics. Again, this is a really good option for those of you who have kind of reached the upper beginner stage to lower intermediate. Start speaking, okay? Start speaking. And this can be things like ChatGPT, AI. There's so many good apps nowadays to practice your speaking with AI. This could even be on a call with one of your friends who speaks the language, or just on Discord finding strangers to talk to. There's so many good servers for this. Now, again, this is one of those tasks that you can do whilst you're multitasking, because you could be cooking your breakfast and you've got your headphones in and you're just practicing the language by speaking. And so speaking is another really good way to kind of just find that time to practice your language learning skills. Now, another great way that we can make time to learn a language is creating a schedule or some kind of structure for language learning. This is something that the members in my community ask me all the time, and something that they really struggle with. And it comes up a lot in our one-to-one coaching course. Now, this one may sound quite obvious, but it is quite hard to set up, especially as somebody who maybe hasn't learned a language before. Now, this works slightly different to the kind of other methods that I've mentioned in this video. But what this consists of is essentially just setting aside some dedicated time for language learning and making sure that you fill out that time every single day. For example, in the morning, this could be 10 minutes of listening to a podcast, and then when you get home, maybe 10 minutes of flashcards and an hour of watching YouTube in your target language. This one sounds quite obvious, but I know a lot of people struggle with kind of what content they're supposed to put in there, what activities they should be doing. So if this is something that you struggle with, definitely check out the link in the comments to join my community, or the link in my bio. And this is something that we can definitely work on together. This step is more about prioritizing time that you maybe wouldn't have dedicated to language learning, and instead creating that structure that you are able to follow and that you really want to complete in order to make sure you're consistently putting that time towards language learning. Now, the last thing you can do, which isn't hugely accessible to most people, but you can take a course in school or in uni, or maybe if you're working in a job where there's a department where they speak this language or another language, transferring to that department might be a good idea. Now, as I said, a lot of people might not want to do this. Personally, I don't even really think that school teaches you languages very efficiently. However, it is always just good to be put in an environment where you are learning a language or speaking a language or just hearing it. However, if this is what you're going to do, I think it's still absolutely necessary to be doing work outside of school and the steps that I mentioned in my other videos on how to learn a language. So that's all for now. If you can put into place just 1 or 2 of the steps that I mentioned in this video, then I promise you, you are going to find the time to learn a language and actually make decent progress and finally get started. So in summary, this is everything that you can do. Number 1, if you're an absolute beginner, get started with audio courses. Number 2, everybody should be listening to podcasts when you're moving or multitasking. This is super effective. Number 3, replace any content in your native language with content in your target language. Number 4, change your music to music in your target language. Number 5, talk to natives or ChatGPT to practice your speaking and get input from your partner. Number 6, make a schedule or outline what you're going to do in the day to learn the language and make sure you really dedicate that time to it. And finally, you can also take it at school or university, making language learning a part of your environment. Now, my biggest tips to actually make this stick and effective way to find time in your journey is to make it fun, make it easy, and just remember that a little becomes a lot over time. Now, if you want to get started straight away, here's some actionable steps that you can take to just get started straight away. Firstly, you can swap out 50% of the time that you spend listening to music for podcasts in your native language. Number 2, next time you're traveling, spend the whole journey listening to a podcast in the target language that you want to learn. Number 3, replace 1 episode of a TV show that you are going to watch with an episode of a TV show in your target language every single day. This way you can finally start learning that language you've always wanted to learn, or find the extra time to boost your progress in the target language you're already learning. Now, if you want one-to-one coaching, exclusive course content, or just a personalized structure to learn languages and work with me, check out the link in my bio or in the description to join my community. I'll see you next time.